Hello everyone, I have spent some time playing through Breaking Point, the first ever attempt at a real F1 story mode by Codemasters. When this was first announced, I was very hyped as I've always wanted a F1 based story mode game, to the point where when playing through normal campaigns I would come up with stories in my head. But even though I was very hyped to finally be playing an F1 story mode game, doesn't mean that I was maybe a little bit let down by the final product. Now sadly, we live in a time where it is normal for a AAA semi-high budget game to be released with varying degrees of bug. Looking at you, Cyberpunk. Now I'm gonna have to cover some of these bugs that happened to me. Now this could just be me, I am kind of unlucky with hardware issues sometimes, but whenever I would go to get interviewed by Claire after a race, the game just graphically bugged out. I'll be showing a clip here obviously, and I couldn't even see my answers to a response. And then after the interview had finished, the screen would go black, and then eventually it would go to the sort of trailer when you're in your own trailer, but no text, no nothing would load, and there'd be no way to fix this without completely alt F4ing the game and restarting. Also, once or twice my save file corrupted, which was just annoying at the best of times. And also, of course, I have some issues with the physics in this game, but that's just a Codemasters F1 game, so nothing to really say there. So now it's time to cover the story. The prologue starts with F2 driver Aiden Jackson driving for Carlin. We join him at the end of the year, the final race of the season at the Yas Marina circuit, where in order to win the 2019 Formula 2 World Championship, also quick side point, this game takes place over 3 years, he needs to win the race to win the championship, which of course, as a racing fan, everyone loves to see. Now, before I say where Aiden finished, I feel it's important to mention during this playthrough of the game, I was playing on the easiest difficulty, but also as a little side note, I will add the first time I ran through this game, I played on the hardest difficulty, and to be honest, it wasn't that much easier than the easiest difficulty. But anyway, we're saying that Aiden won the Yas Marina race by roughly 18 seconds, therefore making him win the F2 World Championship. And now the game flash forwards to the first race of the 2020 season at a press conference where a young Aiden Jackson is there sitting in an AlphaTauri race suit alongside Esteban Ocon and Lando Norris for his first ever race in F1. So now Aiden is on the grid ready for his first race in F1 for AlphaTauri. AlphaTauri. I'm gonna say AlphaTauri. I don't remember what's right. I apologize. But basically, his goal for the first race is gonna be to catch his teammate, the veteran Casper Ackerman. And of course, because I'm playing on extremely low difficulty, I catch him within 2 laps. But then, as we catch him, we go to make an overtake at a part of the track where you probably shouldn't be overtaking. And then, out of nowhere, the man, the myth himself, Devin Butler, appears from out of nowhere, making a corner that should barely be 1 wide, 3 wide. And of course, 3 into 1 doesn't go. Casper comes off worse out of the crash and has to go repair his front wing. And then Aiden is left to try to pick up the pieces of his embarrassing first race. Now, another thing I want to add here that I wasn't gonna put in the bugs, because I don't think it's a bug, because it constantly happened, is that before the crash, the car ahead of Casper was Lando, who was 10 seconds up the road, and after the crash, he was only 3 seconds ahead, which doesn't make the most sense to my small brain. However, after the crash, we then once again go on to finish the race extremely well, scoring our first podium and a second place in our first ever race. And then of course, Aiden returns to the paddock to a very unhappy teammate. And Devin's there, and he's been a bit of a dick, but
Casper, listen, I don't know what happened out there. It wasn't my fault.
Well, whose fault was it then? Who was the idiot behind the wheel of your car? You're pathetic. You won't even admit when you made a mistake.
How did they ever sign you? Oh, Butler. Devon, I didn't see you there.
What, like, out on the track today? You nearly took me out, mate.
Look, I don't know what happened. You cut in, I swerved. Next thing I knew, Casper was out.
Whoa. Mate, I was nothing to do with it. Whatever that was all on you. Don't be trying to pass the blame because you haven't settled in yet.
Okay, Aiden, let's talk about that incident with your teammate.
Chapter 2. At the Shanghai International Circuit, Aiden is going for a debatably optimistic move on his teammate Casper. Then Ackerman forces him off the track, of which Aiden is very upset and angry about.
What was that all about?
You can recover, Aiden.
That's not okay. That's really not okay.
Which in my case, he uses that anger like some kind of sieve to go on and win the race. After the race, Aiden and Casper get into a little fight over the somewhat strong defense by Ackerman.
What the hell was that? You nearly put me out the entire race. Bumping wheels like that, you could have put us both into the barrier. Casper. Come on, man.
I have to make a phone call.
Casper. Ackerman!
And of course, after that arguing, Devon is standing right in the background ready to taunt, saying that Casper wanted AlphaTauri to sign Ricciardo again, which I don't think anyone in any realistic world would think would happen, but hey.
You two are like characters in a badly written sitcom. He wanted your lot to sign Ricciardo, you know. Ask anyone.
What do you mean?
The paddock talks, mate. And so did Ackerman. Should have heard him last season. He didn't care who he talked to, and he was always going off on one about you. He tried to stop him from signing you. He didn't want to play babysitter.
Oh, he did he?
Everyone knows.
Chapter 3 sees Aiden and the team off in France, in which the objective for the race is to beat both Renaults and McLarens, which obviously Aiden does by coming first, beating everyone by a large margin of time. Chapter 4. After coming off the high of winning in France, Aiden is getting ready for his home race when he gets a phone call from none other than Devon Butler himself.
Come on, keep up. It's Devon!
Butler?
The very same.
How did you get this number?
It doesn't really matter.
Putting the horrible thought behind him that Devon now has his phone number, Aiden is mid-race when he starts to get a puncture, forcing him to make an unaccepted pit stop, putting him out of position in front of his home crowd. Of course, Aiden then uses the magical power of the home crowd, which obviously gives you 2 to 3 attempts, to go on and win the race. Chapter 5. Now in Monza, also known as the Temple of Speed, Aiden is having issues with losing power down the straights, which is not ideal at a track called the Temple of Speed. However, it's okay because big man team principal assistant person Brian is there to help and tell the team to give Aiden the new Spec 2 engine, of which the team only has one of for some reason. Brian then also takes Aiden aside to tell him that he is the team's superstar and that he has gotten word that Red Bull team principal Christian Horner might be watching his performances.
Anything for our star driver.
Which of course is overheard by Casper, and at this point I swear that AlphaTauri is trying to cause a massive rift between its drivers. Like, why would you only bring or make one Spec 2 engine? You have 2 cars. But either way, Aiden uses the new engine and its super drive to go on and finish P1. Chapter 6, which also just so happens to be the end of the 2020 season. It all comes to a head in Mexico when after a bad qualifying, Aiden is left on the back foot behind Casper, and he spends the first couple of laps trying to catch him, and when he finally catches up to Casper, well, I'll just show you what happens.
Keep it clean.
And Hamilton's onto the grass, and Hamilton's had a massive crash, and he's crashed into his teammate. The two Mercedes come together, and
And of course, after you and your teammate have a massive crash, you then have to go to the team principal's office. Or in this case, Brian's office. I don't know who Brian is in the team if I'm being honest, because he's not the team principal. I think he's like the team principal's intern or something. That sounds about right.
Close the door. Sit down. What the hell was going on out there?
After Brian thoroughly yells at both drivers for causing the crash, this is when the game takes on its second big change, as in we are moving up to the 2021 Formula 1 season, ignoring the fact that after Mexico there's like 2 more races, but they are not important. This is also where the game changes character, as we no longer play as Aiden Jackson and we are now playing as his older teammate Casper Ackerman, and this is also the first time that we get to meet Casper's wife.
Go away.
Hey,
Hey,
so? What did he say?
threaten to fire both of us.
He won't.
That's not the point.
I'll just leave you be.
Is Lily okay? Does she know I'm safe?
Yeah, she saw you climb out. She's fine. I left her with your mother.
Okay, good.
You've survived worse, you know?
Doesn't make it any easier.
Maybe not, but you're not hurt. And you have a family who love you. The rest are just details. I'll see you later.
Let's see what the future holds.
Now, I'm going to be 100% honest with everyone here. At this part, after Mexico, the story just didn't drag my attention that much. I think that's because it really started to drag on, in my opinion, when you start playing as Casper, because I believe Casper you play for like 10 chapters. It was quite long. So I'm going to quickly run through the main sort of gist of every chapter. So chapter 7, we're back in the Australian Grand Prix. Ackerman gets eliminated in Q2 when Jackson goes on to the top 10 shootout. Ackerman is very upset that the team let Aiden out in front of him both times, which is sort of unfair. And then next chapter, we're in Bahrain. We're kind of going in order of the way actual races happen here. But of course, in Bahrain, Ackerman is having massive problems with his tyres, losing grip at almost every corner in very dramatic fashion. So he obviously wants to pit, and he asks the team to pit, but the team say you cannot pit. Jackson's pitting this lap, you have to stay out for another lap, which is fair until it is discovered that Jackson is a lap down. So I don't know why they didn't let Ackerman pit first. Who knows? They're trying to make drama. Now on to chapter 9, also known as my favourite part of the game, where you play as Ackerman, as this race takes place at Casper's home Grand Prix in the Netherlands at Zandvoort, where the home crowd is gathered in the stadium to watch Max most likely.
Verstappen's got nothing on me.
But either way, Casper wants to impress in front of his home crowd, so his goal is to get a podium, of which he starts P8. Of course, this was a very easy sort of activity, once like the others. Of course, after the race, this is where Casper, on the high of getting a podium, has to have a conversation with Devon Butler, who congratulates him on the podium, as Aiden walks past and says absolutely nothing, like a bit of a dick. And then Devon slowly slips in that he has apparently all but signed for Red Bull, which we're going to ignore the logistics of Red Bull taking a Haas driver over an AlphaTauri driver for now. But hey!
Really? Oh, congratulations.
Keep it under your hat, but talks are going well. So you're going to have to get on with Jackson for a little while longer.
Yeah, well, we get on fine.
That's not what I heard.
No?
I was chatting with one of your mechanics. He had some very interesting things to say about Jackson. You know what his problem is, don't you?
Go on.
Thinks you're getting too old. Says you're not fast enough anymore.
Too old.
Hey, mate, his words, not mine. You want my advice? Prove him wrong.
Here we are greeted with 2 good chapters in a row. Lucky us, with chapter 10 taking part at the Canadian Grand Prix. Jackson was right on the tail of Ackerman, and then the team came over ye old little radio to give Casper the order to let Aiden through, which Ackerman refuses, which would be unfair if immediately after that Ackerman didn't take off and finish the race in first, but that's not the point. He should have let his teammate through. After the race, however, we get another spicy tidbit of Jackson and Ackerman gaining a wee old fist fight.
Just talk to me for once.
Just let go. Now back off!
Why do you have to be like this?
Oh, so I'm the problem!
To the point where it takes a mechanic and Esteban Ocon for some reason to break it up. And then, in the anger of the fight / breakup, while Esteban Ocon standing awkwardly in the background, Casper announces his retirement. Not on purpose, someone was filming the video, most likely Devon, because it's always Devon. And boom, Casper leaked his retirement, and now everyone thinks it's Aiden's fault.
Well, you won't have to put up with me for much longer.
What's that supposed to mean?
I am sick and tired of all this. I'm done.
You what?
I'm retiring.
Wait. What? Casper! Casper!
So here is where I feel the game really starts to slow down for the next couple chapters, so I'm just going to include them all in one quick fire session right here. Chapter 11 sees the team head off to the Austrian Grand Prix, where Aiden is in an incident that we don't know about that causes a safety car, where Ackerman needs to try to make his way back up the pack. Also, it is at this point that Casper tells Aiden that he is not retiring because of Jackson, and not to listen to the public and just focus on his job. Chapter 12 takes us to Belgium, where Ackerman starts 11th and needs to make his way to finish 5th or better in a race that has very temperamental weather conditions. I swear, one lap it was intermediates, the next lap it was wets, the next lap it was back to soft tires. I didn't understand it. And now, we are at literally the worst track known to man, the Sochi Autodrome. God, I can't wait till we leave there. Where Ackerman has to finish in the top 10 and get the fastest lap for that valuable extra point in the team's rivalry with Haas for 4th in the championship. I'm going to ignore how unrealistic it is that Haas are securely 4th in the championship, but hey, also after Sochi there is a team dinner where of course Ackerman and Jackson are both forced to go, and it is at this point where Big Daddy Brian himself comes in and decides to squash the beef between the two. Where it turns out the rumour about Aiden getting paid more than Casper was a complete and utter lie. Probably developed by the one and only Devon Butler.
What about you?
He didn't want me on the team.
Didn't I?
He wanted Ricardo instead.
And you thought I was past my best?
What? But that's not true. You're having an amazing season.
Could you verify that number for me?
That's right.
And that's the contracted amount, yes?
Yeah.
Do you mind if we show him? You two are a couple of chumps, do you know that?
Butler.
And I believed him. How could I be so stupid?
Thanks, Casper.
Now that Casper and Aiden are working together to beat Devon Butler instead of separately, it's gonna go a lot easier, as Aiden immediately finds out as Casper shares some valuable setup information with him.
We've adjusted the camber. Seems to help manage the tire temperatures a bit better.
Yeah?
I'll get them to share my setup data with you. Just see how it feels.
Now, mid-race, Ackerman is in P12, and in order to help the championship fight, he has to finish ahead of Butler, who starts off in 8th. Now, I at this point wanted to bring my own little spice into the campaign as the story was fading in importance in my head. So I decided, now that Casper and Aiden are such good friends, I decided Casper would not pass Aiden. He would give Aiden the higher position, as Casper knows that Aiden needs everything he can get to beat Devon to that Red Bull drive. Now, of course, did this actually work out? No. As I mentioned before, I'm playing on the lowest difficulty, and staying behind a car on the lowest difficulty is actually more difficult than the hardest difficulty in the game at overtaking. It was so frustrating to the point where I remembered, you can change the difficulty mid-race. Now, I went to do that. I didn't read the pop-up, so I don't know what it said, but resetting the difficulty resets the race, and at this point I was just drained. I was so upset with myself that I immediately quit out, and then I got back on the next day. I switched it back to easy, and Casper had lost the thought of helping Aiden get the Red Bull drive. The next chapter, chapter 15, is at the United States Grand Prix, Circuit of the Americas, where the story is basically the same, where you have to beat Butler. But there's a little juicy tidbit where Butler tries to say that he's already signed the Red Bull seat, and for some reason goes to Lando Norris to confirm this, a driver who has never had any affiliation to my knowledge with Red Bull. But hey.
Fellas! Sell-out crowd, they're saying. Casper, I haven't seen you since you announced your retirement.
No?
Well, fair play to you, mate. Takes a brave man to admit he can't compete anymore. I didn't mean it like that. I'm just saying, you're a brave man. I'm paying you a compliment.
Now you're saying I can't compete?
Nah, I didn't mean it like that. I just meant some have said that, well, you're past your prime, that's all.
That won't work anymore, Devon.
Sorry, what won't work?
We know what you've been saying about us.
Oh, I genuinely don't know what you're talking about.
You know, I used to think you were just a gossip, Devon. Now I know you're a liar.
Oh, come on! You guys used to be so much more fun. Used to get into fights, take each other out of races. We all enjoyed that. Oh, you know, it was very entertaining. Now you just mope around bickering over who said what. It's a bit petty, to be honest, guys. Seriously, you're supposed to be role models.
Yeah, I won't argue with you, Devon. I won't win.
Yeah, you do seem to struggle a bit with winning, to be fair.
Yeah. And maybe you are right. Maybe I am past it. But he's not. And he's the better driver.
What, the rookie? He's only just got here. You do know the Red Bull seat is mine, don't you? The contract's as good as signed.
There's just one problem with that, Devon.
Huh? Enlighten me.
I don't believe a word you say anymore.
Tell him, mate. Mate?
I don't know who this is going to. P6.
And after all that, it's been a while, but we have finally made it to the final chapter of the game. Chapter 16, the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And, would you believe it or not, AlphaTauri is in a shot of snatching P4 in the constructors from Haas. But however, in order to do this, Ackerman needs to finish ahead of both Butler and Mick Schumacher. After catching Butler and Schumacher, however, Devon goes for a, let's call it, very optimistic, very obvious what he was actually meant to do, dive bomb, where he crashes directly into Casper, taking himself out the race. However, probably not a part of his plan, Casper gets going again. Like, come on man, if you're gonna crash into someone, at least make sure you crash them out of the race. ideally not yourself. After this incident, Aiden is directly behind Casper, and Casper lets Aiden go through, as Aiden has to finish on the podium in order to win P4 in the Constructors. Now, I will say, on my first playthrough, this was very hard. It took me like 2 tries. Obviously, this time I did it instantly, but that's not the point.
Pass, Casper.
Okay.
You need to go for third, Aiden.
Bobby, third. What about Casper?
What, we let Aiden pass?
Let Aiden pass. Do the best you can, Casper. How's the car?
Good enough. Will you give a message to Aiden?
You need to pass Casper, Aiden.
Copy.
He says you'd better get on that podium.
That will get the team fourth.
Maybe, if Casper's car...
And then the game ends with Jackson and Ackerman celebrating on the podium when Christian Horner, with his weird looking pixelated smooth face, looks up at Jackson, obviously nodding to the fact that they'll probably sign Jackson for next year. And maybe we will find out in next year's F1 2022 game. However, maybe they shouldn't finish Aiden's story in the next game. Maybe they should take a little bit of a break from Breaking Point and really work on the story. Because I'm going to be honest, the first time round, I loved the story. I was like, hey look, that Mexico crash is just like Nico and Lewis's crash in Spain. I was like, hey look, whenever they crash, they all do the anger wobble thing that I think Sebastian Vettel did when he crashed out the German Grand Prix. But for what they have to work with, they didn't really come up with much unique things, obviously copying from real life in those examples, when I feel so much more could be done with this premise. And I hope so much more gets done with it in the future. And obviously I hope they fix the bugs, but it's an F1 game, so what can I expect? And also I don't think the story is going to get any better. And I don't think they're going to stop and take a couple years off, because Codemasters is now owned by EA. And Breaking Point was already a DLC that you had to buy, I believe. I don't know, I got it with my pre-order. But yeah, and EA, let's be honest, ruin everything they touch. So that's disappointing. Hopefully they won't, you know, make Codemasters add even more microtransactions than have already been added. But I guess we'll just wait and see. I know this has been an extremely long video, and if anyone is still here, I just want to thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, maybe consider liking it. You could dislike it, but YouTube removed the dislike button. Well, your ability to see the dislike button. So it'll only make me sad. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.